The worst betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people who know exactly how to earn your trust before they destroy it. For as long as anyone could remember, Gideon Bramwell had been the steady heart of the Bramwell family's antique business. While others chased attention, Gideon quietly protected history. Every antique, every painting, every rare sculpture that passed through the family's hands was treated with care because he believed some treasures carried stories that deserved to live forever. Customers respected him. Collectors trusted him. Even the museum curators who worked with the family often asked for Gideon by name. His grandfather once smiled and said, "A business can survive without money for a while. It cannot survive without trust." Those words stayed with Gideon. As the years passed, everyone quietly assumed he would one day manage the family business. Everyone except one person, his cousin, Benjamin. Benjamin had a gift for making people laugh. He was confident, charming, and always knew the right thing to say. At family dinners, relatives praised his personality. At business events, clients enjoyed talking to him. But behind every smile was something no one else noticed: jealousy. Benjamin hated hearing people compare him to Gideon. Every compliment Gideon received felt like another reminder that he was living in someone else's shadow. Instead of becoming better, Benjamin slowly became more resentful. The opportunity he'd been waiting for finally arrived. The Bramwell family was preparing for the largest exhibition in the company's history. Collectors from across the country would attend. The centerpiece of the exhibition was a priceless antique known as the King's Compass, a beautifully crafted gold navigation instrument that had survived for centuries. Its value wasn't measured only in dollars. It represented the Bramwell family's reputation. Gideon personally supervised every security check. He inspected the display cases, verified the inventory, reviewed the transportation schedule. Everything had to be perfect. Benjamin watched quietly from across the room. He smiled as Gideon carefully locked the display. "No one is more careful than you," Benjamin said with a friendly laugh. Gideon smiled back. "We've worked too hard for anything to go wrong." Benjamin nodded. "I couldn't agree more." But as he walked away, his smile slowly disappeared. Later that evening, long after the staff had gone home, a single figure quietly returned to the exhibition hall. Hidden beneath the darkness, someone unlocked a private storage room. A gloved hand reached toward the display containing the King's Compass. The following morning, guests filled the exhibition hall. The ribbon was cut. The doors officially opened. Then, without warning, a terrified security guard shouted words that brought the entire room to a standstill. "The King's Compass is gone." The security alarm screamed through the exhibition hall. Collectors froze. Museum directors looked around in confusion. Security guards rushed toward the display where the King's Compass had been. The glass case stood empty. Panic spread across the room. "Seal every exit," the head of security shouted. No one was allowed to leave. Gideon felt his heart pounding. "This can't be happening," he whispered. He immediately joined the security team, hoping they could recover the artifact before rumors began. Instead, the situation became even worse. A guard ran into the hall holding a small evidence box. "We found something." Everyone followed him toward Gideon's office. Inside, hidden beneath a locked cabinet, lay the King's Compass. The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward Gideon. His face turned pale. "I've never seen that there before," he said. "I swear I didn't put it there." Nobody answered. The head of security called for the surveillance footage. Within minutes, a large monitor displayed the recordings from the previous night. The room watched in complete silence. A figure wearing Gideon's clothes appeared to enter the secure vault shortly before the theft. The video wasn't perfectly clear, but it looked convincing enough. Someone in the crowd gasped. Another guest slowly shook his head. Gideon stared at the screen. "That's not me. I never entered the vault." His words disappeared into the growing whispers. Police officers entered the exhibition hall. The lead detective asked only a few questions before looking directly at Gideon. "Sir, we'll need you to come with us." Before Gideon could explain further, something hurt even more than the accusation. His own relatives stepped backward. His uncle looked away. His aunt folded her arms in disappointment. One cousin quietly muttered, "I never thought he'd betray us." Not one person asked whether the evidence could have been planted. Not one person defended him. Benjamin slowly walked forward. placing a comforting hand on an older family member's shoulder. His voice sounded calm. If Gideon really did this, then the family must accept the truth. Gideon stared at him in disbelief. He expected his cousin to stand beside him. Instead, Benjamin avoided his eyes completely. The detective placed handcuffs around Gideon's wrists. Camera flashes exploded across the exhibition hall. Reporters had already arrived. As Gideon was escorted toward the police car, he looked back one final time. His family's reputation had survived for generations. His own had collapsed in less than 10 minutes. And standing quietly behind the crowd, hidden from everyone else's attention. Benjamin smiled. The silence hurt more than the handcuffs ever did. Even after the charges were dropped because there wasn't enough evidence, Gideon Bramwell's life didn't return to normal. The headlines had already done their damage. To the public, being cleared didn't mean being innocent. It simply meant he got lucky. One by one, job interviews ended the moment people recognized his name. Employers smiled politely before saying they had chosen another candidate. Friends who once filled his phone with messages suddenly vanished. Even family members stopped answering his calls. Benjamin watched it all happen from a distance, carefully hiding his satisfaction behind fake sympathy. Weeks turned into months. Gideon sold his apartment. His expensive suits disappeared one after another just to pay rent on a tiny room above an old bakery. Every morning he woke up hoping life would improve. Every night he went to bed wondering if it ever would. Then, on one rainy afternoon, everything changed. After another failed job interview, Gideon stopped at a small neighborhood cafe. His shoulders sagged as he stared into a cup of coffee he could barely afford. An elderly man slowly approached his table. "You are Gideon Bramwell," the stranger said calmly. Gideon looked up, already expecting another insult. Instead, the man extended his hand. "My name is Leander Hayes. I spent 35 years investigating crime scenes before I retired." Gideon forced a weak smile. "I'm afraid you've mistaken me for someone worth talking to." Leander shook his head. "No, I know exactly who you are." He sat down without waiting for permission. "I watched your trial from the public gallery." Gideon's heart sank. "So you're another person who thinks I ruined my own life." Leander leaned forward. "No." His voice was steady. "I don't think you stole anything." For the first time in months, Gideon couldn't speak. Leander continued quietly. Everyone was looking at the missing artifact. Everyone argued over fingerprints, security footage, and motives. He paused. "But I noticed something nobody else seemed to care about." Gideon stared at him, barely breathing. "The thief entered that gallery before the cameras ever started recording." Gideon's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Leander slowly removed a worn notebook from his coat pocket. "I thought so too, until I found one tiny detail buried inside the maintenance records." He slid the notebook across the table. "What you're about to read," he whispered, "changes everything." Gideon opened the first page, and instantly realized someone had planned this betrayal long before the exhibition doors ever opened. The biggest mistake a guilty person can make isn't leaving evidence behind. It's believing no one will notice what doesn't make sense. Days turned into weeks. The news had already moved on. The headlines disappeared, but Gideon Bramwell refused to let the truth disappear with them. He wasn't thinking about rebuilding his reputation anymore. Not yet. First, he needed answers. Every evening, he met with Leander inside the retired investigator's small workshop. The room was filled with old case files, photographs, notebooks, and shelves packed with years of experience. Leander slid a folder across the table. "Most people search for what they can see," he said. "The truth usually hides in what everyone ignores." Those words changed everything. Instead of asking who stole the king's compass, Gideon started asking different questions. Why was one security camera missing exactly 37 seconds of footage? Why did the inventory records show two different timestamps for the same shipment? Why had one employee's access log been edited after the exhibition opened? None of those details proved anyone was guilty. But together, they painted a picture that didn't belong. Night after night, Gideon carefully compared documents. He replayed surveillance videos frame by frame. He highlighted tiny inconsistencies most people would never notice. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Every suspicious change led back to someone inside the Bramwell family business. But there was still one problem. Patterns weren't evidence. No detective would reopen a case based on suspicion alone. Leander leaned back in his chair. We're getting closer. But closer isn't enough. Gideon rubbed his tired eyes. There has to be something we missed. The next afternoon, he quietly visited the Public Business Records office. He wasn't searching for Benjamin. He was searching for the company's financial activity. Hours passed. Most documents looked ordinary. Then one receipt caught his attention. It listed a private meeting reservation at an exclusive antique showroom 3 days before the exhibition. The reservation wasn't under Benjamin's name. It belonged to a shell company. A company that had no real employees. Gideon's heartbeat quickened. He followed the paperwork. One document led to another. Finally, he reached a visitor log from the showroom. His eyes locked onto a single signature. Benjamin Bramwell. The visitor he had met wasn't another family member. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a museum curator. It was an internationally known private art collector with a reputation for quietly purchasing rare historical pieces through secret deals. Gideon slowly lowered the file. For the first time since his arrest, he wasn't chasing guesses anymore. He was standing at the edge of something far more dangerous. Because if Benjamin had been meeting a private collector before the theft, then maybe the crime had been planned long before anyone realized the king's compass was missing. The person who destroyed Gideon's reputation wasn't trying to become powerful. He was trying to escape the life he had already ruined. After discovering Benjamin's secret meeting with the private art collector, Gideon and Leander continued digging deeper. What they found was not what Gideon expected. Benjamin wasn't living the perfect life everyone believed. Behind the expensive suits, confident speeches, and charming personality was a man hiding a dangerous secret. A trail of financial records revealed multiple unpaid debts, large transfers, secret loans, and repeated payments to gambling companies. Benjamin had spent years trying to maintain an image he couldn't afford. Every luxury dinner, every expensive watch, every business event where he acted like the successful heir of the Bramwell family. It was all a performance. He wasn't wealthy. He was desperate. Leander looked through the documents carefully. People don't always commit crimes because they want more. Sometimes they do it because they are terrified of losing what they already have. Gideon stared at the evidence silently. For years, he had wondered why Benjamin would betray his own family. Now he understood. Benjamin didn't just want the king's compass. He needed it. The antique was worth millions. Selling it to the private collector would solve Benjamin's financial problems and allow him to disappear before anyone discovered the truth. But there was one obstacle. Someone had to take the blame. And Benjamin had chosen Gideon. Meanwhile, inside the Bramwell family business, Benjamin was receiving praise. Relatives called him a hero for protecting the company's reputation. Employees admired him for staying calm during the scandal. They believed Benjamin was the family member who handled the crisis. The same man who created the disaster was being celebrated for fixing it. Gideon watched the situation unfold from a distance. A part of him wanted to expose Benjamin immediately. He wanted to walk into the family office and throw every piece of evidence onto the table. But Leander stopped him. Anger will make you act quickly. Proof will make them believe you forever. Gideon knew he was right. Being accused once had taught him a painful lesson. The truth wasn't enough. The truth needed evidence that nobody could deny. So he continued investigating. He tracked the collector, followed the money, looked for the missing artifact. Then, one evening, while searching through international auction websites, Gideon noticed something that made him stop breathing. There, on a private overseas antique marketplace, was a familiar image. A gold compass, an ancient design, a priceless artifact that belonged to the Bramwell family. The king's compass was no longer missing. It had been found, but it was not sitting in a police evidence room. It was waiting to be sold to the highest bidder on the other side of the world. The person who created the perfect trap never expected to become the person trapped inside it. Benjamin Bramwell continued living as if he had already won. He walked through the family business with confidence. He accepted praise from relatives. He smiled at employees who believed he had protected the company from disaster. But Benjamin didn't know that every step he took was being watched. Gideon had learned something important. Anger could destroy his chance at justice. A rushed confrontation would only give Benjamin time to hide the evidence. So instead of exposing him, Gideon decided to become patient. With Leander's guidance, he contacted investigators and shared everything they had discovered. The suspicious meeting, the hidden financial problems, the overseas auction listing, the altered records. For the first time since the theft, Gideon felt like he wasn't fighting alone. The investigators began tracking every movement connected to the stolen artifact. They monitored the private online auction where the King's Compass was listed. They followed the shipping records connected to the overseas buyer. They reviewed financial transactions linked to Benjamin's secret accounts. Slowly, the picture became clearer. The theft wasn't random. It was a carefully planned operation. Benjamin had created a story where Gideon looked guilty, while he played the role of the loyal cousin trying to save the family's reputation. But every lie created another trail, and Benjamin was leaving more clues behind every day. One evening, Gideon sat with Leander reviewing new information from the investigators. "He's getting closer to exposing himself," Leander said. Gideon looked at the documents on the table. "How?" Leander pointed to a transaction record. "Because desperate people become careless." Benjamin's biggest weakness was the same thing that pushed him into crime. Fear. He was running out of time. The private collector wanted confirmation. The buyer wanted guarantees. The debts were growing. Benjamin needed to complete the deal before anyone discovered the truth. So he arranged a private meeting. A meeting he believed would finally solve his problems. He chose a quiet restaurant away from the city center. No family members, no employees, no witnesses, or at least, that was what he thought. Benjamin arrived wearing his expensive suit, carrying a small folder containing the final documents. He sat across from the person he believed would help him complete the sale. He spoke freely. He explained the plan. He discussed the artifact. He revealed details he had never told anyone. What Benjamin didn't know was that every word was being recorded. Hidden cameras captured his every move, every sentence, every confession. And while Benjamin believed he was one step away from freedom, he was actually walking straight into the evidence that would destroy him. The night Benjamin Bramwell was crowned the future of the family business, he had no idea that the man he betrayed was standing just outside the walls, watching everything fall into place. The Bramwell family mansion had never looked more beautiful. Golden lights covered the garden, expensive decorations filled the halls, and important guests from the business world gathered to celebrate 50 years of success. It was supposed to be a night of honor, a night of pride, a night where Benjamin would officially become the face of the company. Inside the crowded ballroom, Benjamin stood beside his father, accepting praise from everyone around him. "Benjamin has shown the vision and strength needed to take this company forward," one guest announced. The room filled with applause. Benjamin smiled confidently as cameras captured the moment. His family looked at him with pride, believing they were watching the beginning of a new era. But they did not see what was hidden beneath the surface. They did not know about the missing records. They did not know about the altered files. They did not know that every lie Benjamin had created was slowly closing around him. Outside the mansion gates, Gideon Bramwell stood quietly in the darkness. He watched the celebration from a distance, his expression calm but his mind focused. Months ago, he had been treated like a problem, like someone who did not belong. The family had chosen Benjamin over him without asking for the truth. Tonight, they were celebrating the wrong person. Gideon looked through the windows as Benjamin raised a glass with the same confidence of a man who believed he had already won. But Gideon knew something Benjamin didn't. The truth had a way of finding its way back. A cold wind passed through the empty street as Gideon checked his phone. The investigators had promised him that everything was moving forward. Soon, the family would see what he had seen all along. Suddenly, headlights appeared at the end of the road. A black car slowly approached the mansion entrance. Gideon watched carefully as a stranger stepped out. The man carried a small leather briefcase and walked directly toward the celebration. Nobody inside recognized him. Nobody knew why he was there. But Gideon noticed the way the man held the briefcase tightly, almost protecting what was inside. Then the stranger entered the mansion. Minutes later, the music stopped. The laughter disappeared. The celebration became silent, because the stranger placed a sealed evidence file on the table in front of the entire Bramwell family. And written across the front were 4 words that changed everything. The celebration that was supposed to mark Benjamin Bramwell's rise to power became the night his entire world collapsed. For years, Benjamin had carefully built a perfect image. He was the loyal son, the future leader, and the man everyone trusted. But in a single moment, the truth walked into the room. The stranger opened the leather briefcase and stepped aside as several investigators entered the mansion. The music stopped. The guests turned in confusion. Benjamin's smile slowly disappeared. "Everyone needs to see what has been hidden," one investigator said. The large screen behind the stage suddenly came alive. At first, the family saw ordinary security footage from the company warehouse. But then the investigators revealed something shocking. The missing sections of the recordings were not lost. They had been carefully removed. The footage was reconstructed, showing exactly what happened on the nights when valuable inventory disappeared. The room became silent as everyone watched Benjamin's movements appear on the screen. Every visit, every conversation, every suspicious action. There was no longer a mystery. There was only the truth. Benjamin looked around the room, searching for someone to defend him. But nobody spoke. The investigators moved to the next piece of evidence. Financial records appeared on the screen. Hidden transfers, secret payments, money moving through accounts connected to the stolen inventory. The numbers told a story Benjamin could no longer control. Then came the shipping records. The investigators showed documents connecting the missing products to shipments arranged during Benjamin's private meetings. The dates matched. The locations matched. The evidence was impossible to ignore. But the final reveal changed everything. Private messages were displayed. Messages Benjamin thought nobody would ever see. Words he had written in confidence now appeared in front of the same people who once praised him. His family stared in disbelief. The man they celebrated only minutes earlier had been exposed before everyone. Benjamin's face turned pale. His perfect plan had fallen apart. Gideon stood quietly at the back of the room, watching the truth finally speak for itself. He never needed to destroy Benjamin. Benjamin had destroyed himself. The room remained frozen as the investigators finished presenting the evidence. Then Benjamin suddenly stepped forward. His confidence returned, but this time it was mixed with desperation. "This isn't what you think," he said. Everyone looked at him. Benjamin pointed toward the crowd, searching for a way out. "Someone else planned this. Someone else set me up." The family exchanged confused looks. Because if Benjamin wasn't responsible, then who was he blaming? And why did he look more afraid of that person than the evidence itself? The truth had finally reached the room, but Benjamin Bramwell wasn't ready to let his empire of lies collapse without a fight. The evidence was overwhelming. The recorded meeting, the financial records, the connection to the stolen artifact. Everyone had seen the truth. For the first time, Benjamin's confident smile disappeared. But instead of admitting what he had done, he made one final move. He created another lie. Benjamin looked around the room at his family, business partners, and investigators. His voice became shaky. "I didn't want any of this to happen." Everyone watched in silence. Then he said the words nobody expected. "I was forced into it." Benjamin claimed he wasn't acting alone. He said another family member had pressured him. He claimed he was threatened and manipulated into helping with the theft. Suddenly, the room changed. The accusations that once destroyed Gideon were now spreading through the entire Bramwell family. Everyone began questioning everyone. Old arguments resurfaced. Hidden disagreements from years ago came back into the open. A family member admitted there had always been tension about who would control the business. Another revealed that Benjamin had been secretly borrowing money for years. The carefully polished image of the Bramwell family began breaking apart. But the damage wasn't limited to the family. Business partners who had trusted the Bramwell name started pulling away. Major collectors canceled agreements. Museum directors questioned whether future partnerships were safe. The company that had spent generations building its reputation was now fighting its biggest crisis. And this time, there was no way to hide it. News outlets picked up the story. By morning, the scandal had spread across the city. The same people who once praised Benjamin were now asking how they had been deceived for so long. Meanwhile, Gideon stood quietly watching everything unfold. He had imagined this moment many times. He imagined exposing Benjamin. He imagined seeing his name cleared. But he never expected the truth to reveal so many other secrets. Leander watched Gideon carefully. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Gideon looked confused. What else is there? Leander didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the entrance. Because someone else had arrived. Someone who had been silent from the beginning. Someone who knew more about the theft than anyone realized. The room became quiet as the stranger stepped forward. I need to tell you all something, the person said. Every eye turned toward them. Then came the sentence that changed everything. I was there the night the king's compass disappeared. One witness carried what months of investigation could not. And with a single folder, Benjamin Bramwell's entire world came crashing down. The room remained silent as the witness stepped forward. No one interrupted. No one moved. The witness placed a thick envelope on the conference table and slowly removed its contents. Inside were signed shipping contracts, private emails, bank transfers, insurance paperwork, and a handwritten notebook that belonged to Benjamin himself. The investigators examined each document carefully. Every page connected to the next. The picture became impossible to ignore. Benjamin hadn't acted out of panic. He hadn't been pressured. He had planned everything months before the king's compass disappeared. He had secretly arranged the overseas buyer. He had created fake security records. He had planted the stolen artifact inside Gideon's office. Even the insurance claim had been prepared before the exhibition opened. The theft had never been just about selling an antique. Benjamin wanted the insurance payout as well. He planned to profit twice while letting Gideon carry all the blame. The lead investigator looked directly at Benjamin. Is there anything you would like to say before we continue? Benjamin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time, there were no clever excuses. No confident speeches. No one is left to blame. His shoulders slowly dropped. Around the room, family members lowered their heads in disbelief. Some covered their faces with their hands. Others quietly cried. The same relatives who had stepped away from Gideon now realized they had trusted the wrong person. Business partners exchanged disappointed looks. One of them quietly whispered, "He destroyed everything we built." The investigator closed the file. Benjamin Bramwell, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, theft of protected historical property, and fabricating evidence. Two officers stepped forward. This time, Benjamin couldn't hide behind a smile. As the handcuffs closed around his wrists, camera flashes filled the room. The news spread through the city within hours. The respected businessman people admired in the morning had become the face of one of the biggest scandals in the family's history by sunset. His reputation disappeared almost overnight. Meanwhile, Gideon stood exactly where he had stood when his own life fell apart. The difference was that this time, everyone knew he had been innocent all along. One by one, family members slowly turned toward him. There were no accusations now. Only regret, only shame, only hope. The room grew quiet as every pair of eyes settled on Gideon. They weren't waiting for another explanation. They were waiting for something far more difficult. His forgiveness. Everyone expected Gideon Bramwell to take back the company. No one expected him to walk away from it. The conference room remained silent after Benjamin was led out in handcuffs. The family looked toward Gideon with hopeful eyes. His uncle slowly stood. The business belongs to you now. We made a terrible mistake. Please, come home. Several relatives quietly nodded. Business partners agreed. Even the museum directors believed Gideon was the only person capable of restoring the Bramwell name. For a long moment, Gideon said nothing. He looked around the room. He saw faces filled with regret. He saw people who wished they could erase the past. Then he finally spoke. I appreciate your apology, but an apology doesn't erase what happened. The room became even quieter. Gideon's voice remained calm. When I needed your trust the most, you gave me your doubt. He paused before continuing. You believed a lie because it was easier than believing me. Those words struck the room harder than any accusation ever could. No one tried to argue. Because everyone knew he was right. His aunt quietly wiped away tears. One of the older partners lowered his head. For years, they had believed Gideon represented the future of the family business. Now they feared they had lost him forever. His uncle spoke again. If you don't lead the company, who will? Gideon smiled gently. I won't. The answer shocked everyone. He reached into his briefcase and placed a single envelope on the table. This morning, I accepted another opportunity. The room stared in confusion. Gideon continued. I've accepted the position of executive director of the city's new Museum Preservation Foundation. Several museum directors exchanged surprised smiles. Gideon explained that the foundation's mission was to protect historical treasures across the country, improve museum security, and preserve cultural heritage for future generations. He wasn't leaving because he hated his family. He was leaving because his purpose had become bigger than one company. The antiques we protect don't belong to one family. They belong to history. For the first time since the nightmare began, Gideon felt completely at peace. The betrayal that once destroyed his future had quietly opened the door to a better one. He picked up his coat, walked toward the exit, then stopped one final time. Without turning around, he spoke the words no one in the room would ever forget. Sometimes losing the place you thought you belonged is the only way to discover where you were truly meant to be. No one followed him. No one called his name. They simply watched the man they had once doubted walk away with something far greater than the family business. He walked away with his dignity. The greatest victory wasn't Benjamin going to prison. It was what happened after everyone stopped talking about the scandal. Months passed. The headlines disappeared. The television interviews ended. The city moved on. But not everyone recovered the same way. The Bramwell family business reopened its doors, hoping life would return to normal. The antique displays were still beautiful. The employees worked just as hard. The company invested money into rebuilding its image. Yet something was missing: trust. Collectors hesitated before signing new agreements. Museums chose other partners. Investors became cautious. It wasn't because Gideon wanted revenge. He never spoke against the family. He never encouraged anyone to boycott the business. He simply moved forward with his own life. The damage came from one simple truth: trust, once broken, is never repaired overnight. While the family struggled to restore confidence, Gideon's new journey was just beginning. As executive director of the Museum Preservation Foundation, he led teams across the country to recover stolen historical treasures. He helped museums strengthen security. He trained investigators to recognize sophisticated art theft schemes. He worked alongside historians, law enforcement, and international experts to protect priceless collections for future generations. Every successful mission earned him greater respect. Newspapers no longer remembered him as the man falsely accused of theft. They celebrated him as the man who helped recover history itself. His name became known far beyond the Bramwell family. Schools invited him to speak. Museums honored him. Young investigators looked up to him. The reputation that Benjamin tried to destroy had become stronger than ever. One quiet evening, Gideon stood inside a newly restored museum gallery. Children walked through the exhibits with excitement. Families admired artifacts that might have been lost forever. Leander joined him with a gentle smile. "You know," he said, "if Benjamin hadn't framed you." Gideon smiled before Leander could finish. "I probably would have spent my whole life inside one company." He looked around the museum. "Instead, I found a purpose bigger than myself." Leander nodded proudly. Sometimes the hardest chapters in life don't end where we expect. Sometimes they open doors we never knew existed. Gideon walked through the gallery one final time before the museum closed for the evening. He didn't think about the betrayal anymore. He didn't think about the accusations. He thought about the people whose history had been protected because someone refused to give up. And that was worth far more than any position, title, or inheritance. Because in the end, money can rebuild a business. But reputation can take a lifetime. Protect your name. Protect your character. Because when people truly know who you are, no lie can defeat the truth forever.